winning the PR cycle, which in a lot of ways, I mean, he has the bully pulpit of the presidency, and they can only command so much attention being leaders in Congress. The news cycle is one of the most interesting things about this dynamic right now, because for the first time since the inauguration, you have a news cycle that's going to be, I believe, unfavorable to the president. You're not going to be hearing about his policies. You're not going to be hearing as much about two topics that the mainstream media really likes to talk about right now, which are immigration reform and gun control. And so therefore, it's going to be focused, much of the media attention is going to be focused on turf that has traditionally been much more friendly to Republicans, and that's budget and the economy.
Steve, there is a part of, as we put up what the sequester is for folks, up the definition as we talk, about understanding it. We talk about it here, we try to explain it. It's complicated. Some people kind of glaze over about it. And you know, frankly, how much of America is paying attention to it?
I don't think very much, at least right now. Now, that could change. I think the administration's painting a picture of, you know, horror on earth. The United States is going to plunge into chaos if this happens. And in that sense, I think they could be overplaying their hand, because people will see, even if you see longer lines for TSA to get through an airport, you know, if you don't see these dreadful consequences that the administration is talking about, they could be, in a sense, overplaying their hands. But I think Jeremy's right. I mean, one of the most interesting things to look at as this debate unfolds over the next, you know, week or next month is going to be whether the administration can make an argument about these small ball issues, and this is small in the context of the broader debate, when we're not dealing with the bigger issues. We know the entitlements are driving our debt. We know the president hasn't done much. I mean, he hasn't put out any paper proposals about reforming Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. He hasn't embraced that. You had, again, Debbie Stabenow today from Michigan talking, outright rejecting changes to Medicare. That'll be the big question, is can Republicans turn and make this about the big issues and say the president isn't, if he can't cut $40 billion in domestic discretionary funding, how can we count on him to deal with these big issues?
So that's the point, I guess. Will the pressure change, Charles? In, you know, the pressure has been these horrific things could potentially happen. Republicans are making them happen. At least that's the Democrats have been out talking that way. Could the Republicans turn the pressure, as the Speaker tried to do today, about dealing with debt and deficit, and is that attractive politically to enough people out in America?
Cutting is always attractive in the abstract. In the detail, it rarely is, because there are constituencies who get affected if you have cuts. But the cynicism of the campaign of this administration is astonishing. The assumption is that somehow, at every stage of the expansion of the liberal federal government, we have reached a platonic ideal, and that if you cut $1 off that, it's as if God had devised exactly the size of government America needs, and any cut leads to Armageddon. What we're talking about here is 2 cents on the dollar. Every dollar the government spends today, 35 cents, is borrowed from the Chinese and others. What's going on here is ending up in a position where we borrow not 35, but 33 cents. And that is going to bring Armageddon. An example of the cynicism in this campaign is one lobbyist for liberal causes, leading 3,000 organizations in opposing the cuts, who told the Washington Post the following: the worst case scenario is the sequester hits and nothing really bad happens. Think of the cynicism of that. The worst case scenario is that the government makes a small, a minuscule cut in spending on the way to the beginning of a journey of recovery into fiscal health, and that it doesn't hurt us. We actually come out of it alive. And that, to them, is the worst case. It means, think of how they are weighing the national interest, which needs a cut in spending, and these parochial special interests.
Now let me ask you, Jeremy, about this thought about transfer authority. There was some talk about a bill potentially that Republicans would try to move forward to give these agencies, including the Pentagon, the ability to prioritize, at least in this one instance on the sequester, to say, you know, cut the things, the waste, fraud, and abuse, that they could find the $85 billion and not hurt personnel. Do you think that's even possible?
By the end of this week, it certainly doesn't look like it. I mean, it seems that both sides are pretty dug in, and that any action on Capitol Hill will largely be for show. I think that that's an issue that probably gets punted to the next crisis deadline.
Which is the CR, the continuing resolution.
Exactly, when funding for the government runs out, and that's a hard and fast deadline, and that's something very different from what we're talking about right now, because people will notice a government shutdown. They may not immediately notice the impacts of the sequester. I mean, it remains to be seen. And again, this is what's so fascinating about this debate, is the reason why I think both sides are so amped up, is because nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows really if there are going to be fewer teachers in schools, or if there will be fewer TSA agents, and how that will affect their waiting in line at the airport.
But is your sense that Democrats have reached the point where they are now pulling back the fight to go to the CR, to go to March 27th and the continuing resolution?
Yes, I think both sides want that.
Yeah. You agree?
I think they've already made their case. I mean, what we've seen up to this point is largely a PR battle. It's ongoing, as we saw from the dueling press conferences and speeches today. I think that's likely what we're going to see. And then everybody will sort of reassess what actually happens on March 1st and afterwards, reassess where we are, and look look from that point on about the CR.
Frankly, Charles, because of notifications, a lot of these furloughs can't go in place until April or the end of April.
Exactly. And I think when we get to the CR deadline at the end of March, the Republican position, I think, will be one of strength. Its position will be stay with the sequesters, pass the resolution, leave the government open, and it will be Democrats who will be arguing against it, threatening a shutdown. I think that would put Republicans in a much stronger position than they were. Fiscal cliff even stronger than they are now.
Next up, paying for access to the president and his people.
Golden Corral just passed America's Family Budget Act. Right now, kids eat for just $2.99.